After looking at different types of intramolecular bonding, now we come to the intermolecular bonding within molecules and between molecules. Now, intermolecular bonding is basically going to be divided into various types. So we are going to be looking at the one major type of intermolecular bonding, and that itself will be divided into the different types. Any bonding that exists between molecules is known as an intermolecular bonding. It is only broken when the molecule is heated or undergoes a physical process. So if you're looking at this here, you can see there are two HCl molecules. Okay, so we have one HCl and another HCl. HCl molecule that is inside the HCl molecule, this bonding is known as the intramolecular bonding. That is a covalent bonding where electrons are shared. But between these molecules, this particular bonding is called the intermolecular bonding. That is the one that is going to be broken when HCl is vaporized or heated up. But if HCl takes part in a chemical reaction, then it is the intramolecular bonding that is going to break. Okay, so this is what happens here now. When this intermolecular bonding breaks, the liquid HCl is going to change into gaseous HCl. So this is why certain substances exist in gaseous form. It all depends on the strength of the intermolecular bonding. The stronger the intermolecular bonding is, the harder it will be to break it. The more energy will be required to break it. But if the intermolecular bonding is very weak, then it will require slight heat to break it, which will make the substance vaporize itself faster. Okay, so let's look at the three types of intermolecular bonding. There is one major type of intermolecular bonding that we are going to be looking at, and that is a weak van der Waals forces of attraction. Now, weak van der Waals forces of attraction is a general term. This itself is divided into three types, which is temporary dipole. Temporary dipole, also known as induced dipole or London forces, are found in nonpolar molecules as well as noble gases. Now, if you have ever experienced or you have ever been able to smell the petrol stench, okay, when vehicles are being fueled up. Now, the reason why the smell of petrol is so strong at the fuel or the service station is because petrol is a non-polar substance. It doesn't dissolve in water. It's a non-polar substance, which means it has temporary dipole. And this temporary dipole is very weak. So a slight amount of heat around the atmosphere is enough to break this temporary dipole. And that is the reason why petrol molecules can separate from each other and they can move around, which is resulting in their distinctive smell. Okay. Likewise, if you look at mothballs or toilet fresheners, if you leave them around for a couple of days, they will disappear. And the reason why they disappear is because they contain temporary dipole. And this temporary dipole is so weak that the room temperature is enough to break the bond, which allows the particles to separate out and they change into gas. Then the second type of intermolecular bonding is called a permanent dipole, which is dipole-dipole attraction. Permanent dipole is found in polar molecules. So all the molecules that are polar, like water is a polar molecule, hydrogen fluoride is a polar molecule, ammonia is a polar molecule, they will all contain permanent dipole. Permanent dipole is stronger than temporary dipole. So if I compare the boiling point or the melting point of iodine and HCl. So I have iodine, that's I2, and I have HCl. Which one do you think is going to have a higher boiling point? Well, iodine is a non-polar substance. You can use the method of working out the polarity, which we learned in the previous session. Iodine is a non-polar substance, so it's going to have temporary dipole. HCl is a polar molecule, so it's going to have a permanent dipole, which naturally means HCl's boiling point will be higher than the boiling point of iodine. The third type of intermolecular bonding is hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonding is found in those molecules which contain a hydrogen atom and one of the three most electronegative atoms, such as nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine. So if a molecule contains hydrogen which is available for bonding and one of the three atoms, that molecule will have a hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bonding is 10 times stronger than permanent dipole. And we're going to be looking at some examples of hydrogen bonding later on. So the kind of question that usually comes around here is this. Explain why water has a high boiling point compared to HCl. Water is H2O. Okay, it contains a hydrogen atom and it contains oxygen, which is one of the three most electronegative atoms. So water is going to contain hydrogen bond. Water is also polar. So a little bit of permanent dipole will also be there. But the dominant bond will be hydrogen bond. So if I compare the boiling point of these three substances, water will have far more greater boiling point compared to HCl, which will have a higher boiling point compared to iodine. So why is the boiling point of water higher than HCl? Because water contains hydrogen bonding while HCl has permanent dipole. So if you're given a question in order to compare the boiling point of different substances, just talk about the intermolecular bonding. Boiling point, melting point, they all have to do with heat. So whenever heat is applied, intermolecular bonding is broken. Okay. Next up, we are going to be looking at how hydrogen bond actually forms between molecules. So if I am looking at water, for instance, okay, so we have one molecule of water containing the oxygen. That oxygen is bonded to the hydrogen of another water molecule. So between the molecules, there is a bonding between hydrogen and oxygen, and that is the hydrogen bond. Another example is ammonia. Ammonia contains nitrogen, a very electronegative atom, and hydrogen. So the hydrogen of one ammonia is going to bond to the nitrogen of another, and that is the hydrogen bonding. Okay, all these inside the molecule, okay, like these ones here, these are the intramolecular bonding. They are the covalent bonds. That is not going to be affected. Okay, these bonds will not be affected when heating takes place. It is only the bonding between the molecules that will be broken. Now the strength of the hydrogen bond, if you look at both the molecules, water contain hydrogen bond. But which one is going to have a higher boiling point, a higher temperature? So the strength of the hydrogen bond basically depends on the polarity. The more polar the bond is, the stronger the hydrogen bond is. Okay. So if I am looking at oxygen and nitrogen, which is more, look at the position, we have hydrogen here, right, all the way across the periodic table. We have nitrogen here, we have oxygen here, and we have fluorine here. Fluorine is the most electronegative atom in the periodic table. Okay, so looking at the difference between H and N and H and O, which one do you think is going to have a most difference in polarity? So because O is very electronegative compared to nitrogen, the difference between O and H electronegativity will be higher. Therefore, O and H bond will be more polar compared to the N and the H bond. Okay, so you can see here HF is the strongest bond because it is the most polar bond. Between H and F, the bond is more polar, followed by HO, and least will be the HN. Why will HN have the weakest hydrogen bond? Because the bond between H and N is less polar compared to these two here on top. But don't forget that hydrogen, it still has having hydrogen bond. Okay, but in comparison to the two on top, it's having a weak hydrogen bond. The strength is going to be a bit weaker. So now we are going to be looking at how hydrogen bonding occurs in ice. Ice is solid water which forms when water solidifies. So in a solid state, each water is bonded to 4 other water molecules in a tetrahedral arrangement. So this is how the ice structure looks like. So we have one water molecule in the center. which is bonded to 4 other water molecules. Notice that this bond here, okay, the water molecules are not very close to each other. They cannot come any closer to each other. Now, reason why the water molecules are not very close to each other is because the hydrogen and the oxygen, when they came closer, they formed hydrogen bonding with each other. And this hydrogen bonding is a very strong bond. A strong bond that kind of prevents the two molecules from coming any further. Okay, so as a result of this arrangement, as a result of the formation of hydrogen bond, okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 and 4 hydrogen bond. As a result of the 4 hydrogen bonds around each water molecule, you can see there is a lot of gap created. Okay, and these gaps will increase the volume. We say that it has created an open cage-like structure. So this open cage-like structure has increased the volume, the amount of space. According to the rule, density is equal to mass divided by the volume. Density and volume are inversely related to each other. So if volume is greater, then the density is going to be lower. So that is the reason why the density of ice is lower compared to the density of liquid water. Okay, if you're looking at this particular diagram here, why does ice float on water? So you can see here, this is what happens to the water molecules when they are in the liquid state. In the liquid state, they are freely moving around. They do not form 4 hydrogen bond. They form hydrogen bond with each other, but not 4. Very few hydrogen bond is formed. Okay, so as a result, the water molecules are filling up the gaps. They reduce the space. So when the space is reduced, the volume is reduced, density increases. However, when this particular structure is frozen, when they are frozen, particle movement is restricted. Particles don't move around frequently. So when their movement is restricted, they start aligning themselves. And when that happens, the water molecules start coming closer to each other. And when the water molecules start coming closer to each other, they form hydrogen bonds, which results in a lot of open spaces. As you can see here, there's a lot of open spaces here. Okay, a lot of gap is created. And this gap is what we say open cage-like structure. Now, because of this open cage-like structure, volume has increased. Therefore, the density will decrease. So that is why you can see the solid ice is floating on top of the liquid water. So when liquid water is going to be frozen, when liquid water is frozen, as you can see in this picture here, hydrogen bond starts to form, and when hydrogen bond starts to form, there is an entire huge cage-like structure created, which increases the volume, which allows the water molecules to actually move away from each other. That kind of increases the volume. So you can see how the volume has increased upon being frozen. So when the same ice structure is going to be melted, the entire structure is going to collapse because there is a breakage of hydrogen bond, which is going to result in an increase in density because the volume has decreased. However, if you heat the liquid water, when you heat the liquid water, then all the hydrogen bond is going to be broken. So one question that we have to ask ourselves is this: how do aquatic life survive in extremely cold conditions? So you can see here the beauty of this situation is that when ice forms in a lake or in a small body of water, because of the low density of ice, bottom is going to form on top here. There will be a layer of ice that is forming on top due to the low density of ice. And because of this, you can see that this body of water is now covered. There is no loss of heat or gain of heat. So whatever heat is remaining in the water, they are going to cycle up in a convection current. And when that happens, the organisms are able to survive still because the heat is being circulated around. That heat cannot escape. Okay, because there is no provision for the heat to escape. That heat is going to keep circulating within the body of water as it is being covered by the layer of ice. But if water didn't have hydrogen bond, then the entire lake would have frozen up, which would have been difficult or impossible for the marine organisms to even survive the harsh conditions. Okay. So finally, something more interesting about the hydrogen bonding in water. Apart from the fact that hydrogen bonding in water allows game fishing to take place, as we have mentioned earlier, because organisms are able to survive in the lake even though it is covered by a layer of ice. More interestingly is this here, the application of hydrogen bond and the Titanic. What is the relationship between the two? Well, for the very fact that the Titanic sank due to the hydrogen bond in water. And it happened because the ice floats on water due to its less density. Okay, but there will be a small piece of ice exposed on the water while a bigger chunk of that will still be in the water. And as you can guess how the Titanic would have sank, it hit the rim of the iceberg, and that is where the crack occurred in the huge unsinkable ship, which allowed the water to flush out inside the whole vessel, making the ship sink. Okay, so all to do with the beauty of hydrogen bonding in this chemistry. Hydrogen bond is also applicable in our diribonucleic acid, which is our DNA structure. Ever wondered why DNA is helical in shape? Now the reason why DNA is helical in shape is again due to the hydrogen bonding. DNA molecules are made of different amino acids. So two such amino acids as mentioned here are guanine and cysteine, which contain hydrogen and a very electronegative atom. We have one amino acid. This whole structure is one amino acid, and we have another amino acid here. Okay, hydrogen bond between the oxygen and the hydrogen. So there is a hydrogen bond there between the hydrogen and the nitrogen. So that's how they align themselves between this oxygen, hydrogen and this oxygen. So due to this hydrogen bond, they pull each other towards themselves. The entire structure of the DNA is going to turn, and when it turns, it results in a helical shape. Okay, so students, I hope you have understood the concept of bonding. As much as I have applied the applications, some of the real life examples, you would be able to relate better, okay, how the intermolecular bonding is related to our daily lives. And I also hope that you have learned when intermolecular bonding is going to be broken as compared to the intramolecular bonding. Until then, we will see you in the next topic, in the next strand. Take care, keep revising, okay? Stay safe. Bye.